Hi everyone, welcome to our ROOP webinar, all about what is a data strategy and why you might need one. We'll just give it a couple minutes to let a few more people join us. We're expecting a decent number of you today on this Thursday.
Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome. Anybody had temperatures below -3 today?
Or snow.
Or snow? Put it in the chat.
Our snow was yesterday. Very, very
Yeah.
excited on the way to school, and then it all stopped.
We had some sleet. I was so excited.
There is, for your information, this is a Teams webinar, so there is a Q&A button that you'll see at the top where you can log your questions that we'll address at the end. -1 in Stafford. Yeah, we actually had snow in Kent yesterday, Vivian. It was colder this morning. It was -3 this morning.
Snow in Germany, yep. Got a friend in Denmark and they've got snow. Right, I think we shall get started. We'll keep letting people in, and just for everyone's to be aware of, we are recording today's webinar. So if you would prefer not to be included in the recording, now's your chance to leave. We will be sharing the recording after the event, so you can catch up on it later. Ian, would you like to kick us off, please?
Yes, thank you. Can you just forward to the next slide, please? So I'm very pleased to be joined by Jemma from Children's Hospice Southwest today, and long-term associate Tom Lawyer and my colleague Roger. They've all been involved in data strategies in one form or another, and we're going to hear briefly from Tom and Roger shortly before Jemma takes us through the story of what they've been doing at Children's Hospice Southwest. As I said, they will have questions at the end, so do store them up in the Q&A and or ask them out loud at the end of the session. Great. Roger, I think.
Okay, thank you, Ian. Yeah, so we're going to begin with a high-level consideration of what a data strategy is, and we're going to start with this definition. So an evolving plan of agreed steps needed to enhance an organisation's ability to acquire, manage and leverage its data for the furtherance of organisational goals. So there's potentially a lot to unpack in this definition, but I want to highlight two key elements to you that are often overlooked. The first is that it's an evolving plan. Your strategy development will create a roadmap or other documentary artifact, and this must be revisited and revised. Your organisation is going to continue to change, and the strategy also has to change in order to stay relevant and be successful. The second thing that I want to highlight is that the strategy must be agreed, and that means a positive consensus among key decision makers, people who are empowered to influence budgets and organisational priorities. A sideline strategy is a dead strategy, and we've seen that before, unfortunately. A quick look now at some of the possible areas of scope for a data strategy. It's going to vary from one organisation to another, but things that you may very well find yourself looking at. Data analytics capability, of course. What do you need and who needs it? For example, do you need forecasting? Do you need to do modelling or real-time reporting? Security is a big area in its own right and may ultimately get its own strategy, but your data strategy certainly needs to address it. Governance, roles and responsibilities, setting standards and ensuring compliance. How are you going to do that in your organization, and who is going to do it? Training and data literacy, fairly self-explanatory, but ensuring that individuals have the teams that have the skills to make the most of their data. Culture is an interesting one. Questions such as, how much do people in your organization care about data quality? Do decision makers actually listen to data-driven insights, or do they go back to following their gut? An operating model might be a core data analytics team that you set up, or it might be something less formal, like a community of practice that you create to augment your existing structures. And technology, of course. Do you have the software tools and the systems in place to support your data analytics needs? So that's a brief outline of what we might expect from a data strategy. Now we've considered what a data strategy is, Tom is going to look for us at why we might actually need one.
Thanks, Roger. So in terms of possible scope items, Roger's already alluded to some of the ones that may be sort of pain points or issues in your organizations that would allow you to benefit from a data strategy. But actually, since you're already in the room, you're already in this webinar, probably you're aware of which of those are more of a concern in your organization. But even if, as Roger alluded to, even if senior leadership has got behind a data strategy, has championed it, has allocated budgets and set priorities, I think there's some reasons for needing and benefiting from a data strategy that go deeper and are often less apparent. So abstracting from those scope areas, I'm just going to talk about three that I think are common across many different kinds of organizations, and also that are the most common and the least obvious, and I think can have the farthest reaching implications. So my question became really, what are the deeper reasons why you might need a data strategy? So the first one, constructive self-assessment and evaluation. The point I'd emphasize there is the constructive one, which is that all the discussions that take place in the process of developing a data strategy have a purpose. They are critical self-reflection, assessment of your capability, your options, etc. They're designed to generate an understanding of your options and drive decisions about how you go forward. So fundamentally constructive. And I contrast that with the kinds of conversations that often take place in the absence of a data strategy. So, which often can be fault finding, frustrations. So it could be a senior leadership team or internal BI clients who are saying, I don't trust the data. It's too late. It doesn't support my critical decisions. Where did this data come from? It doesn't tell me why, etc. So these fundamentally unconstructive conversations that don't really get at the underlying issues or drive the organization forward. So the point about the benefit of having a data strategy and developing one is that it gives you a chance to completely change the conversation that's going on across the whole organization with respect to data. The second point about communicating strategy is that any strategy development effort, whether it's a people strategy or organization strategy, does draw upon multiple perspectives if it's going to be robust, and then is communicated the decisions and the priorities out across the whole organization. So you'll have your organization strategy somewhere on your website or your staff portal or something like that. Sometimes data strategies are not pushed out, not disseminated as widely as they could, but actually it's a really missed opportunity. And it's also another intrinsic benefit, I think, which is that if in developing the strategy, the data strategy, you have a good understanding of how people in different roles, different types of jobs use, touch, manage, apply data, that understanding is something that a really good communication plan for your data strategy would then get built around. So the point about the communication side of it is that any organization-wide communication about strategy is important to keep people focused on the core mission, the priorities, and also to keep people motivated. And and having that communication plan around your data strategy can help drive that upward uplift of motivation and people understanding where you're going. And I think the final point about the communication is that if the data strategy should be closely aligned with your organization strategy and mission and priority. So it's in effect, the organization's strategy gets embedded into the data strategy. And when you push it out really widely, what in effect you're doing is more deeply embedding the organization priorities across the organization. So that's It's quite a powerful change. The final point about helping people understand what is needed from them and how they'll be impacted by the change is also really important, because for any organization to change, and if we're talking about strategy, we have to be talking about change. We have to make sure that people are pulling together. And to do that, they need to understand how best to do that. And without a data strategy, both referring to the process and as Roger mentioned, some of the artifacts, the document, the priorities, the institutional, the infrastructure changes. Without a data strategy, you can be pretty sure people are not pulling together, or at least not as effectively as they could, or even pulling against each other in how they use or leverage data. So in effect, keeping the organization in a state of kind of data capability stasis. So these three really common features of organizations are all things that can be positively impacted by a data strategy. And what they have in common is they relate to how people see the organization, how they see themselves, and what they understand to have value and meaning. Yet people, yes, the buildings, yes, the reputation, but also the data assets. So I think that is one of the ways that a data strategy can be really transformative for an organization if it's really well executed. Next slide, Kelsey, just a final point. So we also we're thinking about, in preparing for today, about some of the common pain points in developing and articulate and executing a data strategy. These are pretty self-explanatory, so I'm not going to unpack them here, but we just want to put them up there, and some of them may be touched upon by Jemma, to say that if you're experiencing any of these, you are not alone. These are really common challenges and problems with developing and implementing a data strategy, but also a well-designed and well-supported execution of a data strategy can grapple with all of these. So yeah, so if you're facing these kinds of problems, that's why we're here, and you're not alone. And that's it from me. I think back to Ian.
Thank you, Tom. Kelsey, just move us on a slide if you could, please. Thank you, Tom and Roger. So I'd just like to introduce Jemma, and we are very honoured to have CHSW as a client. We started working with Jemma and the team there just over a year ago now, and we helped them do a couple of things, proof of concept, and also we worked on a data strategy with them as well, and now they're going to start implementing that strategy. But yes, it is we are very honoured to work in an organisation that really does make a difference. Not only do they make a difference to children's lives, obviously, but they are hard workers, intelligent, they get things done. They're sensible people, and Jemma really embodies those qualities and has been the driving force behind the Business Intelligence Initiative at CSHW, which she's going to tell us a bit about now.
Thank you, Ian, for that lovely introduction. I'm not sure entirely fitting, but it's always difficult to hear someone say nice things about you, but thank you. No, I appreciate it. Yes, I do work for Children's Hospice Southwest. We are the largest children's hospice charity in the UK, and we support children and families from sort of Bristol south all the way down through Devon and Cornwall. Yeah, it's an amazing charity to be part of. I've been with the organisation about 3 years. Prior to that, I wasn't in the third sector, so I come with more of a corporate commercial background, and it's been really interesting to work with the with ROOP, yeah, for about a year now, on looking at how we are using data and how we can do more in terms of really challenging and measuring ourselves on those keywords that if you are within the charity sector, you will recognise: impact, engagement, and reach. So if I share my screen, I'll walk you through. I think I've got about 15 minutes to run through a presentation. So can someone just give me a thumbs up? Can you see my presentation? Yeah, okay, great. So I'm also going to apologise. I've got that dreaded lurgy that's going around, so I do have a drink in front of me, but I might I might have to stop if I start coughing, so apologies. Okay, so I framed the case study today around the idea of building a data-driven future. We, as an organisation, you know, like many of you, collect lots of data. We're actually very good at collecting data, looking after our data. But what perhaps we recognise we haven't done is pulled that data together. And reported in that sort of holistic way across the organisation to really tell a story that goes beyond finance reporting. So for me, I joined as head of finance. Oh, my slides are not moving on. There we go. I joined as head of finance, so very much with a focus initially on financial reporting. And I think the data strategy in this project has evolved out of that. Most organisations, financial reporting will be your best quality reporting because there are legal requirements to report on your data. We are audited. And so, you know, for me, what I wanted to shift is away from simply retrospectively reporting on the numbers to really trying to tell a story around what we've done and what we're planning to do with those numbers. So that raises the question of what story are we trying to tell? And you know, as it says here, internal financial reporting typically centres on how activity compares to budget. So you'll be very used to seeing management reports. These are the actuals for the period compared to the budget. And then there might be explanations for the variance. So is budget the beginning of our story? Well, I don't think it is. I think if we're going to tell a story using numbers, which ultimately any good data strategy, any good reporting is, you shouldn't be starting with those numbers. The beginning of the story should be your organisational strategy, and that really needs to be at the centre of everything you do, both in the way you approach the project and ultimately what you want to get out of it. So as you can see here, pretty simple. Your strategy drives your operational plans. Obviously, you need to financially forecast, model those. What can we afford to do? How much will things cost? What will we get out of them? And you go backwards and forwards in that feedback loop. And then ultimately, once those plans have been approved, then we are essentially reporting on the progress and impact that they have. But of course, unless you're starting from day one, we don't have a clean sheet of paper. And actually, you know, the organisation that I joined does incredible work and has done incredible work for more than 30 years. So there's nothing wrong with what we're doing. The status quo is the status quo because it works. So we weren't trying to kind of upset the apple cart. We were just trying to improve on what we already do really well. So this is a summary of our key strategic goals as an organisation. These are we're coming up to the end of the 2-year period that these were in place for, and there'll be some refinement and change to these potentially going forward. But my role was really around the data and reporting, and how we can work towards going beyond just financial reporting and looking at incorporating data from other parts of the organisation so that we can provide those accurate insights and impact measurements, which will ultimately inform and support all 6 of those strategic goals. So we started off by being really honest with ourselves, I suppose, about some of the challenges that we had, and you know, this has links to Tom's slide in terms of those pain points, and I am sure that these are really common amongst most people on this call. Excuse me. So we have a number of systems. Most of our systems work pretty well, but they're pretty siloed. So we don't have integrated. Many of our systems are not integrated. There's a heavy Excel use for reporting, and there's lots of manual reporting. So people downloading data, running reports, putting them through Excel, pivoting them, combining them, producing some sort of report, and then sending it out to the end users. And so ultimately, when we were starting to try and tell stories between our data, so for example, we have 39 retail shops across the Southwest, And obviously we have a significant fundraising team that are running events across the Southwest. Now, our retail income, gift aid, our donors sit within one system, and our fundraising team have a CRM system which is separate. And one of the questions we wanted to know is there a relationship between those two? Do our donors support our shops and our events? Can we and what can we do with that information? Are there any potential gaps across the Southwest that we should be addressing? So there are those intelligence gaps because that data was managed by separate teams and reported on separately. There was no joining up of that data and that telling of the combined story. So I proposed with my team a very simple 3-step plan to exploring how we can tackle those issues. I think for me, what was really interesting about the way that CHSW have approached this is we actually didn't write the data strategy on day one. The data strategy has evolved from the work that we've done, talking to people around the organisation, looking at our data, trying to pull it together in using Power BI. I'll come onto that a little bit later, and really trying to be quite agile in our approach, so that as different challenges within the business arise, different opportunities arise, we can respond to those and adapt. And I think, for me, perhaps my background lends itself to that approach. We didn't do what you would traditionally see in a data strategy approach, which is a really big piece of work, a data maturity assessment, review of all the systems, waterfall graphs in terms of where data comes from, where it flows through, who the data owners are. We just didn't do that. And it was really great to have a conversation with Ian and Roger at the very beginning of this project. And they got it from day one that I just was not interested in that. I didn't want to chuck a ton of money at that very theoretical exercise. I just wanted to start small and build on that, learn from every step, and then just slowly evolve our reporting so that we were very much getting value from day one. Obviously, I'm working with charitable funds. Every pound that we get, 90p largely comes from the public, and then 10% comes from statutory funding. So I feel that we have a real responsibility to spend that money wisely, and therefore this data project needed to reflect value for money at every stage. So these are the 3 steps that we chose to approach. We started with people, not processes. We had about 12 workshops, which were about 2 hours each, and they were with each of the key business areas across the organisation. So we've got facilities team, HR team, care team, the executive team, of course, retail, fundraising, clinical, finance, IT, health and safety. So across the organisation, when we started to break it down, there were so many critical business areas. We asked them, what data do you use? Where do you store your data? What questions can you not currently answer at the moment? Which systems work, which don't? What would you like to be able to do? What would you like to know? So that we could ultimately have a vision for what that future state might look like. And what that also meant is that from day one, we had that key stakeholder engagement. So although there wasn't a really clear strategy that we could say to people, we're going to do X, Y, and Z, I think that everybody across the organisation that was in that critical position of being a decision maker felt like they were part of the project to a degree and could influence decision and where it was going. And so it felt very collaborative, which is very much the way that we work. And what it also did is it meant that we were able to really keep children and families at the centre of those conversations. Ultimately, that is our underlying mission as a charity. We are here to make the most of short and precious lives. And therefore, how we support the children and families in our care, how we do more for them, and how we respond to their needs, that needs to be at the centre of all those conversations. I wasn't interested in designing a beautifully scoped out data project just for the sake of it. It was really, you know, what do you need so that we can look after more children and families and do more for them? That was the question with every single one of those stakeholders. And then the second thing that I wanted to do is I wanted to build something practical. I wanted something I could hold on to, albeit not, but I could point to, and I could show people, you know, this is what we can do. This is the power of looking at our data. Looking at it in a different way. So data visualization, you know, not just looking at a graph of numbers, because whilst I can look at a graph of numbers, even I find that a bit boring. I'd much rather look at, you know, a line graph or numbers relative to each other. And people who are not in finance every day certainly don't want to just look at a graph of numbers. They want to be able to look at something that tells them a story straight away. And so whilst this screenshot is taken from a Power BI dashboard that we built with Roop at the very beginning of this project, is heavily redacted, as you'll appreciate. What I've tried to do is leave enough in that you can sort of see that what we've done here is on the left-hand side, we've taken those key metrics and we look at current year and previous year. We have ticks if they're where we want them to be. You know, we've got red exclamation marks if they're not, and then there's rolling graphs that show trends over time. And this is completely dynamic, so we can select the different areas in that top right hand corner, and then the whole graph will shift. We've got scatter plots showing some trend relationship data, and then we've got the picture at an organization wide level. So very, very quickly, key stakeholders can see where our retail performance is going, what the trend over time is, and then use that to inform decisions in terms of investment going forward. And this is replacing very traditional management accounts, which set out a profit and loss account. So you can see that this is a wholesale change in terms of the way that we're using or interacting with data. And then the third thing we did is we trained staff. So much as I enjoy working with Ian and Roger, I don't want to work with them forever. I want us to be able to do it ourselves. I want us to be able to take ownership and be in control of the assets that we're building. And that was fully aligned. I can speak on behalf of Ian and Roger. That's fully aligned with the way that they like to work as well. So they supported us in delivering a suite of training to some data stewards across the organisation at CHSW, and so we now have sort of 8 members of staff with this certified Power BI data analyst training, and that's, you know, going to be really powerful as we move forward and build out new models and new dashboards. So what we've learned through the process, excuse me, by bringing data together from different systems, we've definitely revealed relationships we couldn't see before. We can see shop location influences community engagement and therefore sign up to fundraising events. We can prove that now with data, not just with anecdotal storytelling. And so that shows the power of combining that internal and external data for richer insights for the leadership team. What else shall I focus on here? I mean, Power BI is the platform that we've been using, and we will be integrating that with Fabric going forward as the next stage of the project. That significantly cuts down repetitive reporting time, so that manual effort in reporting will reduce over time. I think we've had to trust the process, and we have built technical debt as we've gone through this process, because we've got to get the balance between achieving something tangible that we can show to our executive team and our trustees and say, look, investing in this will lead to dashboards like the one I've just shown you. And in order to do that, you know, we have to sort of take some shortcuts that we will go back and spend time not fixing per se, but finding, you know, the proper solution within Fabric once we've got that that framework in place, which will give us the longevity and the future cover. And then the centralized dashboards means that everybody is reviewing data in one place. So we have this single source of truth, which is very powerful when stakeholders are getting reports from lots of different places and perhaps contradictory data. It can be quite challenging to convince them that actually this is the truth. This number is the right number. And I think that trust in data is really important for robust decision making. And obviously, you know, the interactivity for anybody who's used the dashboard in Power BI, you know, it's incredibly powerful how it's a click of a button you can kind of change the data that you're seeing. But we're on a journey. I think Ian was perhaps overly kind, saying we have a data strategy. I still don't think that we're there completely with our data strategy. We have the start of one, but you know, I see it very much as a journey, and it's evolving as our organisation focus is also evolving. There's sort of 6 bullet points there, which for me are the kind of the destination. What I'd love to see, what I'd love to get from this project. We've got a way to go. But you know, our goal is to reach a point where we can ultimately support more children and families. To get there, you know, we need data and reporting that does more than just provide numbers for numbers' sake. We need it to actively empower our works, and we need it to be answering those critical questions that the teams on the front line have said to me they need to know the answers to. I'm conscious of time, but I think we're doing okay actually. And so, you know, we aren't finished. We're far from that, but I think that the way we've run this project is very much through iterative development. So we've scoped out each individual phase of the project, and we've agreed at the outset very clear outcomes. For example, the first phase was those 3 that I've run through now, and at every stage of the project I've been absolutely clear that I want us to be able to, as an organisation, walk away, if that needs to happen, with something that is useful and can improve the way that we look after data, report on data, govern data going forward. So it wasn't a case of getting tied up in a project that was going to take kind of, we're tied in for 2, 3, 4, 5 years. The likelihood is that we will be doing this project in some version of it for that period of time. But it was very important to me that we had those boundaries around each phase, so that we knew that we were getting value for money, and we could do that cost benefit analysis for each phase of the development. And it matters. Never mind the kind of the theory of it, it just matters because you know, we exist to spend money that people have given us to support children and families and make the most of going through what is, you know, will be the most difficult time of their lives. And so actually, if we can measure our reach and outcome, and we can say to people, you know, this is what we're doing with your money, this is what we've done, you know, let's be honest, then hopefully more people will want to donate. We'll be able to have those conversations with statutory funders as well, where it's becoming increasingly difficult to get statutory funding, and we'll be able to say, you know, this is what we're doing. These are the gaps in the services that are being provided, that CHSW is stepping in and filling. And so that measurement of impact is, you know, is really critical for a charity. We also are very aware that there will be gaps in our communities. There will be people that there are barriers to entry, and we want to be able to make sure that we're aware of those, and we're doing everything possible to make sure that our service is truly equitable and accessible for everybody. I think tracking outcomes over time will allow us to see which of the interventions we do. Obviously, we have a full suite of service in terms of inpatient hospice care, bereavement services, sibling support, community care as well. So, you know, which interventions truly make a difference, so that we can be really honest with ourselves about that continuous improvement and demonstrating that tangible value of our work to donors. We are increasingly becoming impacted by the wider macroeconomic and political factors. And so, you know, we need to be very live to opportunities and able to move quite dynamically and quickly as opportunities to arise. And in order to do that and invest money in new services or new areas, we need the data to support that decision making. And as my last bullet point there says, a clear data strategy is essential, you know, and is evolving through this project. For us, what that does is it provides a roadmap for how we collect data, store data, analyze data, and then ultimately how we act on it. We want to ensure consistency, quality, and of course that ethical management of what we hold, which is in many cases particularly highly sensitive data, whilst taking advantage of opportunities in technology and AI, and reducing the time that we spend on manual effort tasks. And ultimately, that will support our mission, even though it's not directly linked to that frontline care. You know, we want to be transparent and we want to improve our services, and we want to do that based on evidence rather than intuition alone. So this is what our data strategy looks like at the moment. Starting at kind of 12 o'clock, we're very much looking to break down silos. We want to connect our systems and move towards that single version of the truth. And we're going to be using kind of Microsoft Fabric and Power BI as the platform for that. Oh my God. And then we want to develop dashboards for critical areas, you know, across the organisation, and we'll be using Power BI to provide that really interactive, real-time reporting that users can self-serve and feel confident using. We want to train staff. We want to build that internal capability. We want to implement data standards, data dictionary, security protocols. And in terms of future-proofing the infrastructure, that really is where that adopting Microsoft Fabric as the integrated platform for analytics, storage, and governance comes in, because then we will have scalable architecture that we can build on as the organisation grows. We want to link internal and external data. That's something we haven't really done a huge amount of yet, but there's real power in looking at kind of NHS data around prevalence and our referrals. And we want to use those analytics to uncover more insights and relationships. Ultimately, those data-driven insights will allow us to allocate our resources effectively and improve our care delivery. And as I've said before, you know, we're very much started small, taking small steps, iterative development, peer review testing, challenging ourselves. Is this helpful? Does this work? Is this what we want? And if it is, then we move on to the next step. And we're prioritising development based on measurable impact and balancing that kind of innovation of new reports against the cost of effectiveness and the sustainability. You know, bearing in mind that, as I said, you know, we are using charitable funds here, and that kind of stewardship responsibility is at the centre of what we're doing in terms of making sure that our spending is thoughtful throughout this project. So that's it. That's me.
Thank you, Jemma. I think we should all give Jemma a huge round of applause for ploughing through that, from leaving her sick bed behind.
Fine. Sorry for the dog barking as well.
Didn't hear the dog barking.
Oh, didn't you? Oh,
God. No. But thank you. That was very insightful. Kelsey, do you want to curate questions? I've looked at a few of them and seen that most of them you'll be pleased to hear, Jemma, are for you, but we will try and spare your voice a little bit and try and take some of them off your hands, so to speak, give you a little bit of a rest. Kelsey.
Definitely. Thanks, Ian, and thanks, Jemma. It was a really great presentation, and similar comments from some of the Q&As as well. I'll give you a 2-for-1, two very similar questions from Ian and Gabrielle. Based on your experiences so far, is there anything you would have approached differently if you were starting again, to maybe have gotten to where you are now quicker, maybe with more impactful changes to work collaboratively?
It'd be interesting to hear what Ian and Roger have to say about this. It's like it very much has been a journey we've been on together. So if I'm honest, I think if the honest answer to that is probably not anything significant. If I stand today and look back, I think what we've achieved in a year is actually pretty great. But I'm not going to lie, I'd always like to do more. I'd always like to move quicker. But maybe what's been really interesting about this project for me is, as I said, you know, we really have involved stakeholders from across the organisation, and we have really listened to those different perspectives and those different approaches, and sometimes it's been to our benefit to actually slow down and really think about what we're doing and the structure going forward and how we can best approach it. So I think those different having a team that includes those different working styles is actually really important, so that you don't have one person kind of setting the pace and making those decisions, but you do have that breadth of experience and that breadth of kind of, actually, do you know, I want to take a bit more time and go through the detail of this. That's been really valuable, I think. So would I do anything different? I think probably the one thing that I would have done differently perhaps is the timing of things, especially the timing of the training that we delivered. Because it's been a very strategy that's evolved quite organically, rather than asking at the outset for hundreds of thousands of pounds and then, you know, having a sort of 2-year plan, we've done it in much smaller chunks of time and money. And so I think that possibly we ran our training a little early. And actually we probably should have held back until we had more of our established business intelligence team in place, ready to kind of get cracking on that work. But I think that's probably a case of hindsight giving you 2020 vision, rather than having known at the time that we should have delayed. And that training is certainly still valuable and it's not lost. It's just we've had to sort of do some work to kind of keep that knowledge up. Because if you're not doing this all the time, if you're not in Power BI, if you're not building data models all the time, you know, like with anything, you lose those skills as quickly as you gain them, don't you?
Yeah, I think the point you touched on there about keeping that balance was important, which is a bit of a strain sometimes. So you get, and you know, having, as you say, that mixture of personalities, and listening to one another and respecting one another. So trying to get something that we could deliver without building up too much technical debt was a constant good struggle, I think, and one that we managed quite well. And didn't hide anything. No.
I was just going to add that I think this doesn't apply to CHSW's experience, because of, as you've seen, the way that they have gone about this. But a lot of the time when organisations do create a data strategy, that process involves what should be a healthy feedback loop with time for reflection. And so you get to a point where you know roughly what you need, and you start to think about prioritising it. And because it requires senior stakeholders to be available, the timing of that is often very difficult to get right. Just getting the people in the room, and crucially doing so more than once, so that you can have reflection, give people time to go away and think, and then come back and have another pass at the process. That often has to be trailed a long time in advance. You need somebody who's really good at coordinating these things to get that working. And in sort of post-implementation review style meetings following the creation of a data strategy, that can be raised as I wish we'd just given ourselves a little bit more time at that point with the key people. Not an issue we had with CHSW, thankfully, but that is quite a common one.
Move on to the next question from Graham. This was an amazing use case journey, Gemma. Thank you. My question is, have you attempted to quantify the impacts of the project? And can you put a budget number on that, or a percentage saving efficiency would be interesting?
The answer to that is that we do have KPIs that we will be looking at going forward in terms of kind of hours spent producing manual reports, and that time savings. If I look back, I think, we can say with confidence that, we've almost, one senior FTE time is now saved within the finance team in terms of that kind of manual reporting. And so that person is now, pushing out the dashboards that we've got at the moment on a monthly or a quarterly basis, depending on which one they are, and involved with the care team and the finance team and the fundraising team in terms of helping them develop more financial models and KPIs. So we've got one whole FTE senior finance role doing much more impactful work than they were historically when it was just churning out retrospective numbers. In terms of a budget number, I can't do that. No.
And then another question from Hassan: what has been your biggest challenge so far? So frozen.
The biggest challenge. I think the biggest challenge was probably getting buy-in and trust that a project like this, which is not one that can be put in a box really easily. So I can't say, for X pounds I can deliver Y. It's an ongoing project that you sort of need to do a bit of work on and see whether it's helpful or useful, and then refine that and change it and do the next piece of work. And so, we're very used to scoping out our big capital projects in very neat boxes. So we need a new hydrotherapy pool. Well, that, here are 3 quotes, and here is the cost, and this is when it will be implemented, and what you'll get from it is, a hydrotherapy pool that can do X, Y, and Z. Whereas I think with tech, with development like this, you have to just sort of trust the process. And I think if you have somebody managing the project that has that clarity of vision, what we want to achieve, and can keep a project focused and on track, which was my role, then that's helpful. And I have an amazing team that kind of stepped up and bought into the vision, but that way of thinking is quite a challenge, particularly in the charity sector, where ultimately we have trustees that sign off on capital projects, and they are ultimately volunteers. They are not involved with the business day to day. They're signing off on spending, chunks of money, and they sort of need to that there's an element of, trust that we're heading in the right direction. You've set this as a strategic goal, and the way to get there in a really cost-effective way is to approach the project in this sort of slightly piecemeal basis. That was probably quite a challenge, just to get that kind of understanding of how the project would run.
Thanks, Gemma. Any comments from yourselves, Ian, Roger, Tom, on challenges that you've faced in data strategies, delivering them?
It'd be good to hear from Tom a little bit on this, because Tom's been around a lot of different organisations that have different cultures, and with a charity, you're not coming from an organisation that's generally mature regarding data and analytics. So I think that was a challenge, one that you managed very, very well to bring people up to speed with something that was quite foreign to them. And I know, Tom, you talk about culture a lot in organisations, and getting the people on site.
Yeah, I'll make a few observations about sort of challenges that might relate to, Gemma, what you experienced. I'd be curious. One, as you mentioned, the senior leadership team buy-in, and Roger mentioned that as important. And one of the things I've seen a few times is that a few members of the exec board will get it. Maybe a chief data officer, a chief operating officer will get it, and they'll be on board with the data strategy, and they'll bring the rest of the board with them, and it'll be resourced as it may need to be. But often other members of the board don't really get it at the same level, and they don't always get what their part of the organization needs to do or do differently to help make it happen. So I think one of the challenges I've seen a few times is really confirming that every member of the board and their different remits understand what the implications are for them and the opportunities for them. And I think probably the other most common challenge I've seen is the point about organizational maturity. It's, they tend to be, if you haven't done like an audit at the beginning, it tends to be quite lumpy and quite uneven. You might have your marketing team and your finance team and a few other parts of the organization that are really on board with what the numbers mean, what the implications of them are, et cetera. But other parts of the organization, maybe customer facing or whatever, might be not so much. So I think one of the real, sometimes the transformative potential of a data strategy implementation isn't really fully realized because it hasn't pushed down to every part of the organization and addressed the data capability or data literacy gaps that are almost unavoidable. So that's two things I'd flag up as often challenges.
And often I think, and what we discovered is that is there a feed just for me? I'll turn my mic. Is that the data is going to, in some cases, challenge those preconceived stories and ideas that people have got. And so actually, it's doing that in a constructive and collaborative way, but actually saying, I know that we're going down this route because we believe X, but the data is saying something different, and why is that? So is the data wrong, or actually are we telling ourselves a story that isn't supported by the evidence?
That's a really good point. I think it's a really interesting one that a really good data, delivered data strategy can challenge the mythologies that grow up in any kind of organization.
We've got a question from Caroline. We'll probably direct this one to you, Ian. But how long does training take to be fully competent in Power BI?
Are you fully competent here?
Yes. So it's I've just brought up the diagram that Jemma was showing in preparation for that particular question. So I likened this the other day to taking your driving test, and what you're seeing on the screen there represents 56 hours of tuition that we have designed to take people from Excel through to being competent up to a point in Power BI. So that gives you your driving license, but beyond that, you'll be using your P plates and you'll be wanting coaching. So it takes a long time to get up to speed with data analytics and Power BI. And our training doesn't just cover Power BI, it covers a lot of theory and principles as well, because what we found is that a lot of people that are now using Power BI don't have any background in data and analytics. They may be good with numbers, they may be enthusiastic, which is very, very important, but they don't necessarily understand data theory. They don't necessarily understand how to present data, what colors to use, where, how to lay a screen out. So we cover those things in depth, and then we coach beyond the training as well. So generally, when we move into coaching, that's working with an organization with their data, as we've done with CHSW, helping them put their models together, helping them design their dashboards and build their dashboards. So,
and I think
that was a long answer to a short question. How long does it take? Quite a while.
I think if I can add just a couple of thoughts from the sort of end user's perspective, I think two pieces of advice I would give is that really almost maybe even just do like an internal skills matrix on your team and really think about who's going to do the training, because from our experience, there are just certain skills, certain ways of looking at data, certain attributes that have meant that certain people have just really flew through this training and got it just really fit with the way their brains worked, I suppose. And so I think you want to make sure that the right people are going to be doing this. And then the second thing is that they need to be able to, once they finish the training, they need to be able to be in this world. and it's not something that they can do and then pick up in 6 months or 12 months when the data strategy is in place and we've introduced Power BI. You know, we found that people, you know, we need, in order to keep those skills up, as I mentioned, they needed to have access to Power BI, you know, from the day of the course onwards, and time in their working schedules to actively put those skills into practice.
Yeah, I think one thing that we hear time and time again from people is that they get a lot more out of training when they have their own real world work scenario to go and apply that training to straight away. So that's worth thinking about, that actually the time when you want to get training is probably also a time when you've got a real world challenge in front of you that you would like to be able to use Power BI to tackle.
Can I just have a final, just an additional comment about training? This will maybe not apply to your case study, Jemma, but it's a broader observation, which is that I think often something that can get overlooked in BI team development is the soft skills training, sort of soft skills audit. You can do all these. It's really important to have those technical and analytical skills. But for example, really important one is being able to take a brief really effectively about what is needed, what is the problem, and how to really dig into what the organizational need is. I've found that many BI teams, analytics team, don't have the sort of the relationship skills at the same level to get that brief right every time, leading to a lot of rework and kind of morale issues and reputation issues. Another sort of soft skill side of it is, which can be supported through training, is sort of the idea of marketing your BI, the communications, the engagement with the end users. So a whole lot of social skills and relationship and communication management, which are not always the strong suit of a analytics team, but I think those are aspects that can also be addressed through training and development as well, alongside with more technical capabilities.
I think we are getting close to running out of time, so I think we've got one more slide for you. So yes, if we've got a webinar survey there for you, I think we'll get the link to that in the chat. So we'd like you to hear back from you what you thought of today's webinar, and also if anything that we've said today has rung any bells with you, you are welcome to book a call with us. We do a free 30-minute introductory call for anybody that we haven't spoken to before. So do feel free to take advantage of that. Anything more to add, anybody else? The survey link is in the chat there. If you could do that, please, whilst you're still here. It'll just take a couple of minutes. And Kelsey's put the bookings link there as well, if you'd like to have a chat with us. Yes,
yeah.
Go on, Kelsey, sorry.
Yeah, we have recorded the session. We'll try and get it out as quickly as I possibly can. Keep an eye on your inboxes for that. Yeah.
So on our website, there's a free stuff page, and it will appear there. If you missed our last webinar on why do dashboards fail, that's up there.
And I think I will close the session by saying again, big thank you to Jemma speaking to us with the lurgy. I hope you get some well-earned rest with all the lensip.
Here. Thank you, Jemma.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you, Tom and Kelsey, Ian and Roger. Take care.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you
everyone.
all.
Thanks,
Bye.
everyone. Bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.